Block 1. The line I wouldn't cross. There are moments that split your life into two parts, before and after. For me, it happened at 4:46 p.m. on a Wednesday. Inside conference room D, with the AC blowing too cold and the lights too harsh, I finally said it, out loud, on record, in front of HR. I'm reporting Richard Kessler for harassment. My name is Maya Elkins, I'm 34, and I was a senior marketing manager at WaveMind, a rapidly scaling tech firm in San Francisco that prided itself on innovation, inclusion, and impact. What they didn't mention in their glossy brochures and LinkedIn campaigns: that their chief strategy officer was a predator in a tailored suit. Richard Kessler, charming, untouchable, mid-50s, mentor to many, accused by none, until me. It started subtly. A hand on my back that lingered too long. Late-night Slack messages with compliments that made my stomach twist. Requests to stay behind after team meetings. Offers for mentorship dinners that always seemed to involve too much wine and too little discussion of strategy. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Then, I started saving receipts, screenshots, voicemails, meeting invites with no other attendees. His calendar, conveniently forgetting to include HR when he needed my feedback. I kept it all, and when I finally couldn't stomach it anymore, when he leaned too close during a retreat and said, "Don't be shy, Maya. I reward loyalty in very personal ways." I went to HR. I expected resistance. What I didn't expect was silence. No acknowledgement email, no follow-up call, just a vague robotic message from a compliance address. "We've received your concern and will be in touch." A week passed. Then one morning I tried to buy coffee on the way to work. My card declined. I thought it was a glitch. Until I checked my banking app. 0.00. Every account. Checking. Savings. Even my Venmo balance. Frozen. No explanation. No alert. Just a red banner. Account temporarily inaccessible. Please contact support. I did. They gave me a case number and transferred me 5 times. Until finally a supervisor said, "There's been a federal inquiry tied to your SSN. We're not at liberty to say more." My head spun. A federal what? That night, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. A woman's voice, cold and clipped. "Next time, think twice before accusing people above your pay grade. Some systems don't break. They bury." And that's when I knew. This wasn't a glitch. It was retaliation. And Richard Kessler? He wasn't just powerful. He was dangerous. Block 2, when power strikes back. The next day, I walked into the office like nothing had happened, because that's what they count on. Your silence, your fear, the quiet unraveling of your resolve. But I wasn't unraveling, I was collecting. I opened my inbox. The HR follow-up, still missing. Slack, quiet. Richard, gone. Working remotely, according to his assistant. But his fingerprints were everywhere. My access badge had been glitching. My internal calendar had vanished. Even my company laptop had been remotely wiped overnight. For maintenance, IT claimed. They weren't even hiding it anymore. They were preparing to erase me. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I reached out to a friend, Erin, a former coworker who'd left WaveMind 6 months earlier under mysterious circumstances. Back then, she just said, "It got too toxic." I hadn't pushed her. Now I understood. I texted, "Did Kessler ever make you feel unsafe?" She replied 5 minutes later, "Yes, but I couldn't prove it, and they made it hell to leave." We met that night at a wine bar in the Mission. She looked the same, tired but sharper, like someone who'd stopped pretending to trust people. She didn't wait for small talk. He flirted, then got mad when I didn't play along. Suddenly I was underperforming. I quit before they could fire me. "Did you report him?" She nodded, twice. HR gaslit me. Said I was misinterpreting executive mentorship. I told her about my frozen accounts. Her jaw clenched. Kessler has a contact in financial security, someone who scrubs sensitive complaints. He's buried things before, audits, employee flags, even a lawsuit that never made it past mediation. I stared at her. You're saying he can weaponize systems? I'm saying he already has. Aaron handed me a flash drive. Everything I saved before I left. I was scared to go public. But maybe you're the one who can. I went home and plugged it in. Inside were folders, voice memos, Slack screenshots, emails sent to HR that were never responded to. One audio file made me sick to my stomach. Richard's voice, slow and smug. We make the rules, Aaron. You're either inside the castle or outside in the cold. That night, I contacted a lawyer. A real one. Lena Moretti, known for corporate retaliation cases. Ruthless. Brilliant. Blacklisted by half of Silicon Valley because she wins too often. I sent her the files. She called back the next morning. I hope you're ready, she said. Because we're not just filing a complaint. We're going to war. Block 3. The woman. They didn't expect. Lena didn't waste time. By 10 a.m., she'd already filed preliminary motions to unfreeze my accounts. She cited unlawful retaliation, abuse of executive privilege, and gross overreach through third-party financial channels. Her words weren't just legal, they were lethal. Wavemind received notice that afternoon, and for the first time since Richard Kessler had whispered threats into conference room shadows, the company went silent. I was still technically employed, but suddenly, my Slack was disabled. My access badge revoked completely, and I was placed on administrative leave pending investigation, which meant shut up or disappear quietly. But Lena had a different plan. We go public, she said. I hesitated. Do I really want this to be my legacy? She smiled. It already is. You just get to choose the ending. We drafted a statement. Clean, precise, withholding names, for now. But it was clear. A senior female employee at a major San Francisco tech firm had been retaliated against for reporting sexual harassment. Lena leaked it to an industry reporter known for tech exposés. Not mainstream, yet, but respected. The story dropped in the middle of the night. By morning, it was trending on Twitter. Tech silences women, warned Wavemind whistleblower. The company issued a vague, sanitized response. We take all reports of misconduct seriously and are reviewing our internal processes. They didn't name me, but they didn't deny it either. Then came the DM. From someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Amira, a former junior dev who had left abruptly after a HR misunderstanding. I just read the article. I think Kessler did the same thing to me. I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw your story. She wasn't the last. By day's end, 7 women had reached out. Same MO, same excuses, same retaliation. Wavemind had a pattern. And Richard? He wasn't just a predator. He was the gatekeeper of silence. Lena moved fast. She filed a class action harassment and retaliation suit. We presented the media with redacted testimonies. And I sat for an interview. No disguise, no blur, face forward, voice steady. I'm not here to destroy a company, I said. I'm here to make sure no one else gets destroyed inside it. That night, I got a message from a private number. You made a mistake, Maya. And then, we always win. But this time, they were wrong. Because I had truth. I had others. And I had a storm at my back. Block 4. Breaking the chain of silence. They say silence is safety. But that's only true when your silence isn't someone else's shield. By the end of the week, Wavemind's leadership board was scrambling. External PR consultants were brought in. Their legal team released statements filled with legalese and soft denials. But it was too late. We had built a paper trail. Every unanswered email to HR. Every time-stamped message. Every NDA they pressured employees into signing for closure. And Lena? She wasn't just collecting evidence. She was building a timeline of complicity. I sat down with each of the women who came forward. Erin, Amira, 2 junior marketers, 1 engineer, a finance assistant, even a former intern. Each of them thought they were alone. Each of them had been told, explicitly or through manipulation, that their instincts were wrong, their professionalism in question, their futures at stake. But now, they were a choir, and people were finally listening. An internal whistleblower from WaveMind's IT department contacted Lena anonymously, provided us with a document labeled K-Flag. It was a blacklist. Employees who had raised concerns. Most were marked non-compliant or monitor for HR escalation. My name was on it. So was Erin's. So was a woman I'd never met, who, as it turned out, had been terminated under the pretense of performance issues 2 years earlier. We didn't just have proof of Richard's behavior. We had proof the company tracked complaints and retaliated strategically. Lena handed it to the press. Carefully redacted, legally sound. The next headline hit harder. Leaked internal doc reveals, targeting of harassment accusers at WaveMind. That same day, WaveMind's stock dropped 6%. By Friday, 3 board members had resigned for personal reasons. Richard, still silent, still hiding. But that wouldn't last, because now we had a subpoena, and if he didn't speak voluntarily, the courts would make him. And me? I was no longer scared, because fear shrinks when truth expands. And I was finally free to speak with all the volume they tried to steal from me. Block 5. When the walls crack. Richard Kessler finally broke his silence. Not in court, not through an apology, but through a lawsuit. Filed personally. He accused me of defamation, career sabotage, and intentional infliction of reputational harm. It was desperate, designed to intimidate. But Lena just laughed. Textbook slap, she said. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. A common tactic used by powerful men to bully whistleblowers into silence. And California has anti-slap laws for a reason. We filed a counter motion immediately, asking for dismissal and damages. But it wasn't just about courtrooms anymore. It was about optics. Because for every article he released through his PR firm, painting me as a disgruntled former employee, 2 more voices came forward. One woman, then another, then a man, a junior analyst, smart, soft-spoken, who said Richard had cornered him during an off-site retreat. That when he resisted, his promotion disappeared. The story expanded. This wasn't about one predator. It was about a culture built to protect him. WaveMind went into full meltdown mode. Investors began pulling out. Top engineers resigned in solidarity. A petition circulated online, 50,000 signatures calling for a full audit of the company ES internal practices. And then came the subpoenaed deposition. Richard showed up with a team of lawyers and that same smug boardroom confidence. But under oath, he slipped, lied about his relationship with me, denied messages that we had screenshots of, claimed ignorance of the K-Flag list until we produced metadata with his login ID. His hands shook. His lawyers went pale. The court sanctioned him for perjury, and the defamation suit dropped. With prejudice, meaning he could never bring it back. I walked out of that building feeling like I had just pulled a sword from my own chest. I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. But I didn't smile yet, because I knew this wasn't just about me. It was about every woman who'd been cornered behind corporate doors and told she imagined it. And I was going to make sure none of them ever felt alone again. Block 6. Rewriting the story. After the court victory, everything changed. WaveMind issued a formal statement, not an apology, but a commitment to review internal culture. They placed Richard Kessler on administrative leave pending independent investigation. That was corporate for, we're firing him, but need a quiet exit. But I didn't want quiet, I wanted truth. Lena and I launched a digital platform, SpeakSafe, a legal fund and support network for women and marginalized voices in tech experiencing retaliation. Within a month, we'd raised $200,000 in grassroots donations. Within 2, that number doubled, the New York Times called. Then, NPR. I told my story again, not to relive it, but to reclaim it. I was targeted because I reported misconduct. I was punished for telling the truth, but I refused to let shame become a muzzle. Emails flooded in from across the country. Women in law, in medicine, in government, in media. Each one saying the same thing. I thought it was just me, but it was never just them. It was never just me. And the Hartmans? The ones who swore they always win. Richard lost everything. He'd then resigned to focus on his health. Code for blacklisted. No new executive offers. His LinkedIn went dark. His name quietly removed from press clippings and keynote invites. Even his allies started jumping ship, hoping to rewrite their own history before it caught up with them. But I had a record of all of it. Because survival in these systems doesn't mean escape. It means documentation. And I had kept every whisper, every veiled threat, every insult masked as mentorship. Because I knew, someday, they'd matter. And now they did. Because every time someone Googled Wavemind scandal, they didn't find silence. They found me. Block 7, from target to torchbearer. The ripple effect of truth is slower than fear, but stronger. 6 months after the court ruling, I was invited to speak at a national tech ethics conference in D.C. The panel was titled, Whistleblowing in the Era of Corporate Influence. I was seated between a cybersecurity consultant who de-exposed government overreach and a former pharma exec who revealed data suppression. And me, just a woman who refused to stay quiet about a man who couldn't stand being told no. As I stepped up to the podium, I saw something that nearly stopped my breath. Aaron, Amira, the others, in the audience, not hiding, not broken. There, watching me not as a victim, but as a proof point. I spoke plainly. About manipulation masked as mentorship. About how power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, offering promotions with strings attached. About the nights I couldn't sleep, wondering if fighting back had cost me everything. But the truth is, silence costs more. Afterward, a young woman approached me, fresh out of college, eyes bright, voice shaky. I interned at a firm like Wavemind. I didn't know how to speak up, but after your story, I kept records. I filed my report. I'm not afraid anymore. I hugged her, not because I was proud, but because I recognized her. I'd been her, and someone, somewhere, had once made me feel seen enough to fight. That's what this whole story became. Not about Richard, not about Wavemind, not even about me, but about a system cracking open from the inside. One voice at a time. The media eventually moved on. The hashtags faded. But SpeakSafe didn't. We were still here, still growing. And every time a new name appeared in our inbox, someone ready to speak, to fight, to testify, I knew this wasn't just the end of my story. It was the start of something bigger. Block 8, Legacy in the Ashes. Not all revolutions start with fire. Some begin with a whisper in a break room, a side-eye glance across a meeting, a silent no-mouthed instead of spoken. But mine started with a credit card decline. A system so deeply rigged that it could reach into my wallet, my records, my identity, all because I dared to speak. And now, I was reclaiming every inch of that identity. My lawyer, Lena, began consulting for other whistleblowers full-time. SpeakSafe expanded beyond tech into finance, media, healthcare, anywhere the untouchable had gone unchallenged. We weren't just fighting individuals. We were dismantling ecosystems of silence. But what stayed with me most wasn't the public wins. It was the private messages, the ones from women who never wanted the spotlight, who couldn't risk going public, but sent screenshots anyway. One wrote, "I'm not ready yet. But your story is giving me time, and time is power. Another said, I left before it got worse. You gave me permission to trust my instincts. That was the power of narrative. Richard Kessler had weaponized control, but I had weaponized truth. I returned to San Francisco and started teaching part-time at a local university, an ethics course in digital communications. Mostly young women, all brilliant. In the final lecture, one of them asked, if you could go back, would you still report him, even knowing what it cost you? I paused, then smiled. Absolutely, because the cost of silence is paid in pieces of yourself, and I decided I'd rather lose my job than lose my reflection. She nodded, and I knew she'd never forget it. Because maybe she'd face her own version of Richard one day, and maybe my story would be her fire starter. Block 9, The Fall of a Giant. A year after I filed the original report, Wavemind was unrecognizable. The press had moved on, sure. But investors hadn't forgotten. Neither had the workforce. Over 24 employees had quietly exited the company, citing ethics misalignment. A leaked internal audit showed systemic failures in compliance reporting, many of them tied to Richard's tenure. He never got another executive offer. A man once on track for a Fortune 500 CEO seat was now giving keynote speeches at leadership coaching retreats in off-brand conference hotels. No more spotlight, just shadows. And yet, he was still dangerous. Because men like him don't fade. They regroup. That's why I kept watching. Every podcast interview he did. Every subtle attempt to rebrand. One video clip in particular caught my attention. The real danger in today's corporate world, he said, smiling, is that personal grievances can be weaponized to destroy brilliant leaders. I sent the clip to Lena. She replied with 3 words, "We're not done." We filed a formal request to have the K-Flags list investigated as a violation of employee privacy and retaliation laws. A class action suit was certified. The agency responsible for digital ethics and employment practices launched a probe, and I testified again. Calm, collected. This time not as a victim, but as a witness to a pattern. The judge nodded when I finished. I suspect we'll see more cases like this, he said, but few with the same courage behind them. I didn't need applause. I just needed the record to exist. So if another woman typed retaliation in tech into a search bar one night, she'd find more than a whisper. She'd find a path. Block 10, the legacy they couldn't erase sometimes. I walk past the Wavemind building. It's still there, sleek, steel, glass that reflects everything but truth. A new name is on the signage now, a rebrand, a fresh start. But I know what happened inside those walls, and so does everyone who followed the story, because they tried to erase me. But instead, they immortalized me, not as a cautionary tale, but as a blueprint. My name, once whispered with fear in hushed Zoom calls, now appears in training manuals, keynotes, and HR case studies. Maya Elkins, the woman who did not just report harassment, she refused to be erased for doing it. Richard Kessler's name faded, relegated to whispers and footnotes. Mine became a reminder of what happens when someone weaponizes truth louder than they ever weaponize silence. Today, I still teach, still consult, still run Speak Safe. But mostly, I listen. Because every story that lands in my inbox now, every testimony, every screenshot, every tremble in a voice too tired to fake calm, they're me in different fonts. And my job is to remind them, you're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. You're not dramatic. You are the system's worst nightmare, a woman who documents. I wasn't born to fight. But when they came for my voice, I sharpened it into a weapon. And now, I'm not fighting alone. I'm leading an army.